And I can say this because Lexi's like, you have the perfect podcast voice and audio voice.
Thank you.
It is so soothing and so pleasant to just like,
I
let's hear some more episodes, please.
well,
I
thank you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
God I picked the right career path. For a minute I was off, and now I'm back on track.
Hey there, and welcome to Takeout and Talk, a new series from Cocina and Mecenas Media where culture's always on the menu, even if it arrives in a paper box. I'm Xorje Olivares, and today I'm joined by award-winning podcast producer, Becca Ramos. Becca is the creative behind some of your favorite comedy podcasts like Las Culturistas, This Is Important, and Mess. Well, she's now the host and creator of a brand new series from iHeart called Welcome to El Barrio. We talk a lot about how El Barrio is both a peace of mind, it is a place of our imagination, and it's also a physical space, and now sometimes even a digital space where other folks who are Latino identified, but in this case specifically Puerto Rican identified, to feel validated in their skin and about who they are. We talk about the process that Becca has gone through to feel validated as herself, not only in a professional space, but also as an individual who has ties to Texas, which, as a Texan, I could say there's not many Puerto Ricans, at least not in the era or the region that I grew up in. But we talk a lot about how that is the good foundation in which she's been able to develop herself and bring all of the goodness that is this new show to the masses. So excited to welcome Becca Ramos here to Take Out and Talk. So I already know this is the first time I'm meeting my guest, Becca Ramos, and I already know that we are like besties from another life. Maybe in this life, why am I saying another life? Maybe it's the Texas connection, which we'll get into. Maybe it's the New York connection, which we'll get into. Maybe it's the podcast connection, which we will get into, because this woman has accomplished so much over the past few years. Award-winning podcast producer. A lot of the comedy shows that you listen to regularly, like Mess and Las Culturistas, this woman is behind the scenes on that. Is also the host of a brand new show called Welcome to El Barrio from iHeart, which we will dive so deliciously into. But speaking of delicious, Miss Becca Ramos, as delicious as you are, we talked about your delicious voice before this. What delicious meal are you enjoying with us today?
Well, okay, first off, being asked to be on a podcast where they send me food, say less. I couldn't have said yes faster. I ordered Ways in Brooklyn. They have two locations, one in Fort Greene and one in Williamsburg. I will say the Williamsburg location is better, but I order
Let it be
frequently
known.
from the Fort Greene location because it is closer to my house. And I always get the General Tso's chicken and the garlic eggplant and rice. And it's so because
I mean, it looks good.
I don't actually order takeout too often. I used to pride myself on cooking a lot. But now that I have reached a certain level in my career, I am very busy and I have not been as good about cooking at home and I've been eating out a lot. And this is like my number one. Like if I'm going to order takeout, I order this. If I'm going to otherwise I will go to a location. You know what I'm saying? Like I will only
Mm-hmm.
do a delivery fee for this. I'm not into the delivery fees. I would rather just go out of my way to go pick up the food or like sit at the restaurant at that point. I don't want to deal with cold delivery, but Waze always is always hot. It's always good. They're always consistent and the food it just rocks and it's reasonably
Mm-hmm.
priced.
Okay. I love that you've chosen something that you know is tried and true. You know it's not going to disappoint. Two, it reminds me of I would never really order takeout when I lived in New York. The only time I would was for Chinese food and
Mhm.
Asian food that was close to my apartment in Washington Heights. And so like this is me being getting a chance to relive those wonderful moments that unfortunately no longer exist. But my order is this is going to help bridge us into a conversation that I'm really excited to have with you. So I ordered what's called the Tex-Mex Scramble
Oh,
from a place called Pancake Boy. It's kind of a ridiculous amount of food, which thank you, Pancake Boy. Um,
hey, in this
but
economy?
You
You
know?
can only ask for an oversized order, split into 2.
Split it into two so I can eat it some other time. But it is an omelet with, not an omelet, it's a scramble with chorizo, tomato, avocado, this like really cute like queso sauce on top.
Ooh.
And one, it makes me happy because as somebody who grew up in Texas, very much of that Tex-Mex mentality as a Mexican American boy, I was like, this feels right. Secondly, I feel like this gets to something that you talk about in the podcast, Welcome to El Barrio, because you grew up in Texas, spent those formative years in Texas, but I don't know of any Tex Puerto Rican food that exists,
It
or
doesn't.
like if there's that fusion. So let's talk about what you ate growing up and how it was difficult for you to find that connective tissue when it came to Puerto Rican culture.
Yeah, so it's funny because now my parents are still in Texas. I'm from which where are you from in Texas?
I'm
We
from a
haven't met
town
already.
called Eagle Pass,
Eagle
very
Pass.
small border
I
town.
was gonna say, is it
It's
on the west side?
it's on the west side.
Yeah.
It's about 5 hours from Houston,
Yeah.
which is where you
Yeah,
spend a
so it's
good
like
portion of your.
southwest. Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely far more Mexican. There were no Puerto
Yes.
Ricans in Eagle Pass, Texas,
There's
I
no
will
Puerto
say.
Ricans in Texas, okay? It is a growing community. My mom has now found a few Puerto Rican restaurants growing like today. My parents live in Houston and I grew up in Houston or the Houston area if you're
Mhm.
but growing up there was no Puerto Rican restaurants. I think there was maybe one Cuban restaurant that opened up when I was like in middle school or high school, but there is no Puerto Rican Texas fusion that I know of, at least culinary wise. And there definitely wasn't that even in demographically like restaurants, going places. And also, my family grew up fairly poor. And so we were very like no takeout family. Like we never ate out, which is why I, for many, many years, up until recently, couldn't even see myself as someone who ordered like takeout or like went to go eat at a restaurant or like grab a bodega sandwich on a regular basis. I was like, I
Mhm.
have to cook my food because that is all I grew up knowing. I was like, my mom, she's a teacher who works, a bajillion hours and has 2 kids. She's able to cook 3 meals a day for 4 people. Why can't I? And she's a better woman than me because I can't do it. I can't do it these days.
It's I already there's a point of comparison because my both my parents were teachers, and we were takeout kids because now as an adult, I understand like, holy, my poor parents had to wake up early in the morning, get
Yes,
us out to school. It was me and my older sister. They wouldn't get home until 6 because of all the stuff they had to do afterwards at school. And there was no time, energy to make food as much as we probably should have been making food because teachers did not get paid, do not get paid
exactly.
the salary that they deserve. So it is that that's it's interesting to realize like that point of privilege of getting takeout, and like now as an adult, like, oh, it really is privilege to be able to spend extra cash for the delivery fee or whatever it is to bring something home. But were there certain meals, even if there weren't sort of like those Puerto Rican places to go to in Texas? As you said, there was a lot of meals at home. What is a meal that reminds you of Texas because it reminds you of home and your mom's cooking or your dad's cooking?
Ooh, that is a great question because my mom's a phenomenal cook. She is I mean, I feel like any like cooking bone I have in my body is because of my mom. She forced me to learn and I did not want to, and I did not become a better cook until I was in COVID when I had nothing but time on my hands and was home to
Mhm.
really hone in my skills. But my mom cooked a lot of Puerto Rican food, but very like poor man's Puerto Rican food, right? So it's like a lot of arroz con salchichas, a lot of pollo guisado, rice and beans, of course, a pernil for like Christmas. But I will say, living here in New York City, there's a restaurant called Yellow Rose, and it is the only Tex-Mex place I've been to that reminds me of home.
You've done something that I wish I had the chance to do, which I still do. I don't know why I'm saying like I don't have the chance. But you, in your capacity as a host for Welcome to El Barrio, as a podcast producer, had a chance to like put your mom's voice to tape when
Mhm.
you're introducing who you are, sort of the genesis of this show. What what was that like kind of seeing your mom as a source slash subject for this as opposed to mommy or like the dynamics that you already have?
Well, it's funny that you asked this because she was actually the last interview I interviewed in my family about 2 years ago when I had started the process of building the show. Maybe actually 3 years ago. It was Christmas 2023. So 2 and a half.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to make the show. I wanted to make a show about Puerto Rico, but I didn't know what it was gonna look like yet, and so I just decided to start interviewing my family to see what would come up. I was like, "Well, maybe if I just start asking them questions, I can kinda get a sense of what I wanna make the show about." Because it had always been almost like a limited series in my head, a
Mhm.
narrative limited series vibe, but, that's not what sells. So, the format's changed a lot since I incepted the idea, but I interviewed my grandmother, my uncle, and my father while I was home for Christmas. And I was so kind of emotionally burnt out from those interviews that I actually could not interview my mom. Like I kept pushing it off and off and off because I was like, I know this is like the most important interview. It's probably the interview I need to do the most. And I just couldn't get myself to do it. And I think also with those other interviews I did, they're so much more vulnerable than the one I did with my mom because
Mhm.
they had no guiding path. They were kind of just me coming up with a bunch of questions I wanted to ask them about my upbringing, about their lives. And my grandmother's interview is really beautiful. It's really interesting. It's really fun. But then my dad's interview is really intense and there's a lot of strife between us. And so then I was like, okay, if I felt that way about my dad's interview, I can't imagine what my mom's interview is gonna be. So I'm very grateful that I didn't do it until the idea of the show was, like, actualized, and I had my editor, my producer on the call to help kind of, like, create a little bit of a boundary and help me get through the interview and kind of guide it in a way that will actually be useful for the show.
Mhm.
And it wasn't as hard as I thought it was gonna be. I had been putting this interview off for, like, 2 years, and it turned out fine. It was great. It was, easy. My mom loves to talk, but also we are very close, and I think it was healing for both of us to, like, engage in that conversation instead of as maybe threatening as I thought it was gonna be on my nervous system.
Mhm. Wait, so would you I'm not phrasing it exactly as you did, but you kind of made note of the significance of the conversation with your mom, maybe more so than the others. Is
Yes.
it because of the closeness, or was there something else that you were
Yeah, I
nervous
think
about?
I think definitely the closeness, and also my mom is the leader of the culture in our family. I had almost like a mixed kids experience a little bit, even though I come from a two-person Puerto Rican household. Both my parents are Puerto Rican. It was not culturally both ways. My mom was driving the Puerto Rican culture in our home, whereas my dad was very anti being Puerto Rican. He did a lot to assimilate in his life. I think by virtue of growing up in LA in a time that it was very tough to be, Latino. He was called slurs. He lived there during Rodney King. I think he just like saw what it meant to be an active person of color, and he was just not
Mm,
there. And
yeah,
so I my dad and I have a very complicated relationship. I think he would not think that, but I think we have a complicated relationship. And so I think I was more on the defensive when I was talking to my dad because I kind of that's just like how we communicate. Like I always immediately feel like I have to have like a little bit of a wall up.
yeah,
And with my mom, she's like my everything, and I've had to through therapy kind of like learn to separate our codependency. I think we grew up very codependent of each other. And so I think that kind of amplified what I thought the conversation was going to be because I know my mom feels really guilty about not teaching me Spanish and, for the strife I have with my father in terms of our culture and our relationship. And so I knew it was going to be pretty heavy on my heart, I think, talking to my mom because my mom sacrificed so much and she was a great mother. And I think sometimes when we have these tough conversations, she immediately thinks like, I'm the worst mom. And I'm like, no, like these are important conversations to have. And I can still love you and challenge you at the same time. And she's very willing to
Ooh, I
learn and
love that.
listen and grow. But, it doesn't mean make it any easier.
Yeah.
And I hate
Well,
seeing my mom cry. Like,
oh, in that episode when you do speak with your mom, and she does get emotional recounting a story that we can get into in a bit. It was like, oh, I felt like she was my mom. I felt like
yeah,
she was a stand-in for a lot of our moms because I think what you said is so poignant. This idea of you can love someone and challenge them at the exact same time. And I feel like I've never really done that with my family.
it's hard. It's not for the faint of heart. And I do
Yeah,
not
no
fault
kidding.
anybody who has trouble creating those boundaries and learning how to stand up for yourself in a family system. It is to be the black sheep, is to be the one bringing generational curses. It is not
Hmm.
for the weak. Like, it is very, very challenging. And I've had a lot of therapy, still not enough therapy to be the perfect daughter, but also to have fixed my family. It's a lot. I have spent a lot of time the past 6 years, 7 years trying to navigate my personal growth, and then who does that leave me in my family system?
Hmm. I sort of alluded to it, but there's a moment in that episode that you record with your mom where you address a situation, something that happened in your youth
Yes.
that, for lack of a better word, could be incredibly traumatizing.
Yeah.
Where because of your presentation as somebody who's darker skin was with somebody who was lighter skin, there was this misinterpretation of the relationship between the two of you all.
Yes.
And there was a lot of guilt on the part of your mom and a few other folks about like how that situation went down. I don't want to dwell on that, but I do want to talk about that situation as a whole, where you recognize in terms of presentation how you exist in the world. How did that sort of sense of self change moving to Brooklyn, moving to New York,
Ooh.
and really seeing that, unlike in Texas, Afro Latinos are aplenty in Brooklyn, in New York, and in this sort of situation that you experienced as a kid would not happen, or like
It
not
literally
as
would
much
not happen.
attention would
Like,
be paid to it.
it would not happen here. It honestly, living in New York has been so healing for me. I I have a lot of thoughts about New York, being a transplant, living here. I firmly always tell people that New York is as giving as you are willing to give to it. New York is a place that it is a symbiotic relationship. If you are not
Mhm.
willing to participate in its ecosystem, then it will not keep you. It will chew you up and spit you out. And the thing is, I needed that. I needed community. I needed to be a part of something, because the South does not lend you to that type of community unless you are kind of
Not at
like,
all.
I mean, I'm not sure what it's like on in like West Texas or in the South, in those places where there are higher concentrations of Latinos, but like in Houston, that was not my experience. Like, I grew up in a very white area. I was one of the only usually like black, brown girls in my classes, in my spaces, in my extracurricular activities. So I never had community or knew what it was like to be the beauty standard, right? And so coming to New York and really throwing myself into my neighborhood and my community through volunteer work, just like being outside, talking to my neighbors, I am like, wow, like it doesn't have to be like what I grew up in, like it can be this beautiful thing living here. And I think the only people who have bad vibes about New York are people who are not willing to be a part of, like, they're trying to go to New York to be like, it's gonna change me. I'm gonna have my Carrie Bradshaw moment, my Sex and the City moment, and I'm gonna grow, and then I'm gonna go move to Connecticut and have my little family. It's like, no. Like, if you wanna be a real New Yorker, a real, like, artist in this city, you have to be a part of it. Like,
Mhm.
you can't act above it. You have to be in the grit with it. And so I people ask me all the time if I would move back to Texas, and I'm like, "No, I could never subject my children, if I decide to have children, to the life I lived." And I can acknowledge my parents were doing the best they could, and they were making the choices at that time that they thought were best for us. They had more financial freedom in Texas than they did in California. They had more, you know, ability for stability. They were able to get jobs. They were able to hold those jobs for many years. They bought a house. but at the cost of our collective culture and our collective comfort. And now that I am privileged enough to live in New York City and to have discovered that and to be financially stable enough to be in New York City, I just can't imagine putting my kids through what I went through. And that is what Texas has
Mhm.
not changed. There is nowhere in Texas that my kids will have the same experience that I have healing in New York City.
Yeah. I appreciate you making that distinction because my experience, because I grew up on the border, it was so heavily Mexican that I felt
Yeah.
like I could turn the corner, somebody looked like me, somebody was talking like me. It felt like I was in my own barrio where I
Yeah.
could feel accepted and feel welcomed. Uh, so I do want to focus a little bit on that language of el barrio because I want to ask if in Houston, anywhere else you lived, I know you lived in Portland for a little bit, did El Barrio exist in those places, or have you really start to focus on El Barrio in New York and see like, oh, cool, we have our place, and
Yeah.
not only do we have our place, but this place is wholly our own, and this is where we could be ourselves.
I would say I experienced it in Portland. I never experienced it in Texas. In Portland, it's funny because it is considered the whitest city in America, right? And I did live in Portland at a very specific time. I do not want to discount what people of color are going through today in Portland. I moved from Portland in 2020, January 2020. So before it got as crazy as it's gotten.
Mhm.
With that being said, I worked at a job that explicitly hired really amazing people of color from outside of Oregon. So a lot of us were transplants and a lot of us lived in like a bubble. So we were all really there for each other because we knew we were like the only people of color. Like this
Mhm.
job is like the biggest company I feel like in Portland, Oregon, one of, there's like 3. And those 3 places are the only places hiring people of color. And so we all know each other. Like it's like a very tight-knit community. And I'm still good friends with a lot of those people that I like befriended in Portland. They all moved to New York because we couldn't stay there. But there's also a very large Mexican population in Portland or in Oregon,
Mhm.
outskirts of Portland. And there is this place, um, kind of like in East Portland. I can't remember what they called it, if it was just the Mercado or what, but it's like a little area that felt like a home away from home where there was like a bunch of different Latino food trucks, like all diasporic food trucks. And I used to get this Cuban sandwich there that was bomb out of this Cuban truck. And then they had a Puerto Rican truck that sold bacalao. And so every time I felt homesick, I would, because I luckily had a car in Portland. You don't need a car, but I had a car. And I
Mhm.
would drive all the way like 30 minutes outside of Portland
Dang,
proper.
she needed that food.
Yeah, and I would go by myself, and I would go sit there and order bacalao and a Cuban sandwich and get a little Mexican Coke. It did feel like community more than I ever felt in Texas. Like, I never felt that way in Texas, and obviously in New York, I feel it all the time. My family's from El Barrio. My abuela grew up in Spanish Harlem, and in the Bronx, like, all up and down there and in Washington Heights, and we still have family over in those areas. But the reason I named the show El Barrio was because I wanted people to feel like welcomed, I was like, this is for you. This is the neighborhood. I want you to be a part of it. I want you to feel like this is a community space. And El Barrio is always a community space.
Mhm. I've never once entered spaces like that and felt like an outsider or an outlier.
Yes.
It's like, "Oh, I'm already getting hugged. I'm already getting
Yeah.
food placed in my lap. Like, this is kind of fantastic." But for those who are just kind of entering into this world of what El Barrio is, what would you say are some of those sights, sounds, smells tied to El Barrio? Again, like sometimes it's just a feeling. It's not
Yeah.
a singular location, but what essence does it give? What senses are activated, and what can you name if you can?
I feel like salsa music. If you're hearing any sort of like, and I say salsa specifically over reggaeton because I feel like all the old heads are always listening to salsa, merengue, cumbia, bachata. Like when I hear that, that is what feels like El Barrio over like blatant reggaeton
Mhm.
because it feels like your elders are there, and elders make the community, right? So it is so important to me when I see intergenerational people in the neighborhood and not just young folk. So I feel like listening to salsa, bachata, merengue, cumbia, and obviously hearing any sizzles because people are cooking. And um it's
That's
gotta
in
be
the
loud.
background.
It's gotta be loud as like, it doesn't feel like the neighborhood unless the music is, like, a little bit above your comfort level, like,
Mm-hmm.
walking around.
Just like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah, and then you gotta hear, like, the abuelas in the kitchen. They're yelling at everybody.
I so appreciate you mentioning that you hear salsa before reggaeton, because maybe subconsciously I had this kind of realization that El Barrio does sound somewhat more nostalgic than it
Yes.
does current.
Yes.
Not to say that it's not a real time thing that's happening as we speak, but there is something about the kind of deferring to the elders, seeing the elders out in the street, playing the domino in the street. Like there's just that imagery that comes across a little bit more vividly
Yeah.
than like starkly youth, which
Well, I think something that maybe you're about to hit on is that, like, we in this newer generation, especially, like, looking at you, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're very isolated. They are, and I think this might be a product of COVID, but they do not value in person. They crave it, but I don't think they value in
mm,
person community the same way our elders do as a way of life.
yeah.
And that is why naming the podcast what I did was so important to me because I was like, this is a community. I don't want it to be, even though it's my voice and my journey, and I am like going through it through my lens. I want everyone who's listening to feel like them too, like you are
Hmm.
a part of this, you're on this journey with me, and that I hope that I'm sharing your stories and that you're learning things that you wanted to learn, that you felt uncomfortable asking those questions or whatever. But yeah, I think there is something to be said that like the youth don't don't understand community same way. And we're
I feel like
losing it.
that's true.
We're
Hmm.
losing third spaces, there's all sorts of different ways that we're losing community to the internet and that people crave it, but they don't know how to go about it. And it's like we have to look at our elders. Like we have to respect what they've built and expand upon that. Just because they are older doesn't mean they were wrong. And that doesn't mean we can't change things because they did it that way. There is room for growth and evolution, but we still have to learn from history. And there is like communities like the oldest like thing in the book. Like community is what keeps cultures alive. So you have to meet, you have to commune.
How would you say you've said that this is a 3-year long process to get the show from its inception to now being in everybody's ears? Um, what would you say is one of the things that you learned? What was a fun truth and a hard truth that
Ooh.
you learned about kind of putting a show that is very much rooted in culture together?
Fun truth has been the feedback. I have gotten a lot of really amazing Barrio stories and people reaching out to me being like, thank you for making this. I needed this. Which I would say when you're in the journey and you're like in the thick of it, you're like, God, I care about this so much, but will literally anybody else listen
Hmm.
or care about this? And turns out they did, and thank God. Thank you. But it's very vulnerable. It's very scary to put yourself out there, especially something like this. I come from a comedy background. So, comedy can be vulnerable, but it's a lot of shits and gigs, right? It's a lot of
Hmm.
tea. And this is a very earnest podcast. And I've actually learned my audience doesn't like the comedy stuff sometimes. I put like clips that I think are
Oh,
funny and they do not do as well as like my very earnest, like heart to heart clips. And I'm like, oh, this is my coping mechanism. This is something, this is my bread and butter. But that's not what the people are yearning for. They're yearning for connection, deep connection and empathy, which I'm grateful for. And I'm grateful to be learning. But yeah, I would say the fun part, learning my audience and being grateful that they exist and that they are happy with the product I've produced.
Mhm.
Hard truth, no one will care about this as much as you do. And therefore, there will be a lot of lonely moments, I think, in the journey to fighting for something to get made because you're the only person in the room that really understands what you're trying to do and is willing to see it through.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people are preying on your downfall or like, just not not rooting for you
Mhm.
in the process. You learn a lot of people are not rooting for you on the way up.
I think one of the hardest truths if, for myself in this business has been when you are the one in the room, and I love to bring this up, not as a like like a trauma response, but I feel like when you are the one brown person in the room, the one brown woman in the room, the one queer brown person in the
Mhm.
room, or insert whatever demographic you are that is considered marginalized in mainstream society, like when you're having to advocate for yourself in a room of people that don't get it, that's hard. And yet
So
still
hard.
being able to keep your confidence, keep your gumption and like ambition to believe that what you have is worthwhile, that's difficult. But you did it. And the show's out. It's been a couple years in the making, but the show's out. You've already released several episodes with some really fantastic guests. And I do want to go back to something you did mention about the comedy of it all.
Mhm.
What would you say is the funniest part about being Puerto Rican?
I, like, don't know. I'm, like, truly I'm stumped because, like, I've never really thought of it as funny. I feel like it's funny being a female Boricua, like a Latina Boricua, because I think obviously we get I think the best rap in terms of like body, T, J-Lo, like Puerto
Mhm.
Ricans are the hottest. My mom, she always be sending me those memes that are like, there's American study done that Puerto Ricans are the most beautiful people in the world, you know? So I
Yeah.
think Puerto
Good
Ricans,
on your mom for sharing these memes.
one thing about my mom, she's gonna hype you up. If you are in my circle, like she is your biggest champion. She's gonna be in your DMs. She's gonna be in your comments. She's gonna be posting about you. She's gonna be like, yes, 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 yes.
Your
Like, if
Señora
you are my
Ramos is
friend,
there
she
on
is
your
your mom and she
side.
is your biggest fan. But I think that's the funniest thing is that, like, I don't know, Puerto Rican women are very strong-willed, and I do find that maybe the funniest part about ourselves. I think Puerto Rican women are I'm like, how do I put this? I hate thinking about like Puerto Rican stereotype or not Puerto Rican, Latino stereotypes of like Latino women are fiery or whatever. But I do think
Mhm.
specifically Caribbean women, Puerto Rican women are some of the most strong willed, confident, baddie women you're ever going to meet. And I do love that. I will be Puerto Rican in every lifetime, like that.
Yeah.
Have me be Puerto Rican every. I do love that about being Puerto Rican. Is like the women in my life in general across the diaspora of people are so important to me, but, like, the Puerto Rican women that I have met through doing the show and built community with is, like, invaluable to me. Like, it is, like,
Mhm.
something I treasure more than anything in my life, and I think we're, like, the
Oh, that's
baddest,
beautiful.
smartest, funniest people.
I It's funny you say baddest because I wrote down in my notes that you get a chance to talk to some real Boricua baddies,
Yeah.
and like that's a pretty cool part of the job like being able to professionally embark on conversations that help with the personal betterment. And so,
Yes.
like, what do you say are some of these like lessons that you've learned in having these conversations so far? What are some standout aha moments that you can kind of share with us?
Well, it's so funny that you recognize that I'd be talking to the Puerto Rican baddies because I will say I've been looking at my list of people and I'm like, "Damn, I probably should get some men in the mix." I just don't talk to men. Like, it really is like I'm like, "Oh, girls and gays, like, that's it." Like, ugh.
We need our time.
So, like, if you got some men that really wanna be on the show, let me know. You can't have machismo. That is a rule. You cannot be on my
Mm-mm.
show if you're gonna bring in machismo. But, the lessons I've learned is honestly the business prowess some of these women have, like the confidence and the courage to do the things that they're doing and has really inspired me of like, where do I take Welcome to El Barrio? Like, what is its next chapter? What is my next chapter beyond, working in what I do? Like, because we're in an age where we don't have the same jobs forever, there's no trades anymore. Like
Nope.
you have to just evolve with the times. And so I'm constantly thinking like, okay, what is next though? I'm not this as long as I've been at a job, but like what I know I can't be here forever. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been very inspired. I've learned so much from the baddies that have come on my show and taught me what they do.
Because you just mentioned evolution, I want us to kind of end there. When you think about the evolution of El Barrio, I think the barrio that we grew up with looks quite similar to what it is today, but
Mhm.
obviously there's been some changes as the time goes on, as generations come in. Where do you see El Barrio going? What do you hope for it? What are the desires that you have in place for a sense of community
Yeah.
that sometimes actually excludes people as it's meant to include?
Yes, that is a great question. I think the biggest thing I hope is that, the show is successful enough that it can I can do it full time and I'm not working on 8 other things to like keep myself afloat, that
Mm-hmm.
the community grows strong enough that I can really lean in. I would say I have such a passion for community building and community work that I I'm like, how do I put this? Money's never been my goal, right? I never had it. So it's never been my dream to be rich. I think my dream, because I was so without community, is to be in community and a part of community. And as long as I'm doing good in the world, like that's what matters to me. So in terms of the evolution of El Barrio, I hope it becomes like a standing, like physical space. I want there to be live events. I want there to be meetups. I want there to be physical community as well as digital and virtual community. And I want to just continue to uplift other Puerto Rican and Caribbean voices and just support the diaspora, like whether it's the Latino diaspora in general or the Puerto Rican diaspora, the Caribbean diaspora. I just want to make work that is impactful in the world and is giving as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're doing it. It's
Thank
great. I,
you.
I've sent the show to all my Puerto Rican friends. I'm like, hi, you should listen to, you should listen to, you should listen to, because there's something so exciting and invigorating when you do find your people. And whether that's physically find your people, digitally find your people, I think you've found it. Like
Yeah.
you've been able to really provide that to a lot of folks. So for folks who are looking for it, how can folks listen to the show, be more involved with the content that you create?
Yeah, you can find us and follow us at literally at Welcome to El Barrio on Instagram. We have a Substack that's linked in our Instagram bio. I think it's just wteb.substack.com. And I am at Bex, Beccs Ramos on all platforms. And you can listen to Welcome to El Barrio wherever you get your podcasts.
Wherever you stream your podcasts.
Wherever you stream your podcast. And our Substack, I am trying to post more, but I'm like, we
It's
have to
honored here.
understand that I'm still a full-time executive producer on 4 other shows. So, I am trying really hard to carve out enough time to, like, do extra stuff on Substack because I really do wanna build the community on there. People have been subscribing, which has been really exciting, but I gotta give y'all more, and I know that, so I'm working on it.
Mhm.
I'm working on
Okay.
it.
So stay tuned
Stay
wherever
tuned.
you are. Just a reminder, if you want to follow Cocina on social, just go to @WeAreCocina on all social pages. You can go to wearecocina.com. Also, you can follow me at Xorje O, XORJEO, for all of my Xorje takeout goodness. But this has been such a wonderful, I love meeting another Texan. I love us vibing and having a good
Yes.
conversation, good food. All the best of luck to you, and welcome to El Barrio. And again, for folks who are only now learning about the show, please go support it and please go listen. But thank you for your time, Becca, and thank you
Thank
for
you for having
your
me.
good conversation.
Oh, this was so lovely. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so
Yes,
happy
it
to be
is.
here.
Takeout and Talk is a Cocina and Mecenas media production. It's hosted and produced by me, Xorje Olivares. Special thanks to Mecenas Chief Creative Officer, Sarah North, and its Head of O&O and Audience Development, Laura Del Proyecto. For more Takeout and Talk, visit our YouTube page or wearecocina.com.